Hello, and welcome back to Baby Alice's Stories. We now return to Jingo by Terry Pratchett, Part 6. Vimes coughed, and then coughed some more, and eventually opened his streaming eyes in the confident expectation of seeing his own lungs in front of him.
Glass of water, Mr. Vimes.
Vimes peered through the tears at the shifting shape of Fred Cullen.
Thanks, Fred. What's the horrible burning smell? It's you, sir.
Vimes was sitting on a low wall outside the wreck of the embassy. Cool air washed around him. He felt like underdone beef. The heat was radiating off him.
You was passed on for a while there, sir,
said Sergeant Cullen helpfully.
But everyone saw you swinging that window, sir, and you threw that woman out for detritus to catch. That'll be a feather in your cap, and no mistake, sir. I bet the Klatchians'll be giving you the Order of the Camel or something for this night's work, sir.
Cullen beamed, bursting with pride by association.
A feather in my cap,
murmured Vimes. He undid his helmet with a certain amount of exhausted delight, saw that every single plume had been burned to a stub. He blinked slowly. Blink, blink.
What about the man, Fred? Did he get out? What man?
There was... Vimes blinked again. Various parts of his body, aware that he hadn't been taking calls, were ringing in to complain. There had been some man. Vimes had landed on a bed of something, and there was a woman clutching at him, and he had smashed out what was left of the window, seen the big, broad, and above all strong arms of detritus down below, and had thrown her out as politely as the circumstances allowed. Then the man from the roof had come out of the smoke again, carrying another figure over his shoulder, screaming something at him, and beckoned him to follow, and then the floor had given way.
There were 2 other people in there,
he said, coughing again.
They didn't get out the front way then, said Cullen.
How did I get out? Said Vimes.
Oh, Dorful was stamping on the fire down below, sir. Very handy, a ceramic constable. You landed right on him, so of course he stopped what he was doing and brought you out. It's gonna be handshakes and buns all round in the morning, sir.
There weren't any right now, Vimes noted. There were still plenty of people around, carrying bundles, putting out small fires, arguing with one another. But there was a big hole where congratulating the hero of the hour should have been.
Oh, everyone's always a bit preoccupied after something like this, sir,
said Cullen, as if reading his thoughts.
I think I'll have a nice cold bath,
said Vimes, to the world in general.
And then some sleep. Sybil's got some wonderful ointment for burns. Ah, hello you 2.
We saw the fire, Carrot began, running up.
Is it all over? Mr. Vimes saved the day, said Sergeant Cullen excitedly. Just went straight in and saved everyone in the finest tradition of the watch.
Fred, said Vimes wearily.
Yes, sir.
Fred,
The finest tradition of the watch is having a quiet smoke somewhere out of the wind at 3 a.m. Let's not get carried away, eh?
Colin looked crestfallen.
Well,
he began. Vimes staggered to his feet and patted his sergeant on the back.
Oh, all right. It's a tradition, he conceded. You can do the next one, Fred. And now,
he steadied himself as he stood up.
I'm going down to the yard to write my report. You're covered in ash and you're swaying, said Carrot. I should just get on home, sir. Oh no, said Vimes. Got to do the paperwork. Anyone know the time?
Bingily, bingily beep,
said a cheerful voice from his pocket.
Damn,
said Vimes, but it was too late.
It is,
said the voice, which had this squeaky, friendly quality that begs to be strangled.
About 9-ish?
9-ish?
Yep, 9-ish, precisely about 9-ish.
Vimes rolled his eyes.
Precisely about 9-ish, he said,
pulling a small box out of his pocket and opening the lid. The demon inside gave him an angry look.
Yesterday you said,
it said, that if I, and I quote, didn't stop all that 8:56 and 6 seconds precisely business, I would be looking at a hammer from below. And when I said, Mr. Insert Name here, that this would invalidate my warranty, you said that I could take my warranty and...
I thought you'd lost that thing, said Carrot.
Ha! said the disorganizer. Really? You thought he did? I don't call putting something in your trouser pockets just before they go into the wash losing it.
That was an accident, muttered Vimes.
Oh, and dropping me in the dragon's feeding bowl? That was accidental too, was it? The demon mumbled to itself for a moment and then said, Anyway, do you want to know your appointments for this evening? Vimes looked at the smouldering wreckage of the embassy.
Do tell, he said.
You don't have any, said the demon sulkily. You haven't told me any.
You see, said Vimes, that's what drives me livid. Why should I have to tell you? Why didn't you tell me? 8-ish, break up riot at mundane meals and stop detritus shooting people, eh?
You didn't tell me to tell you.
I didn't know, and that's how real life works. How can I tell you to warn me about things that no one knows are going to happen? If you were any good, that'd be your job.
He writes in the manual, said the demon nastily. Did you know that, everybody? He writes in the manual.
Well, of course, I make notes.
He's actually sneakily trying to keep his diary in the manual so his wife won't find out. He's never bothered to learn how to use me, said the demon.
What about the Vimes manual then? Snapped Vimes. I notice you've never bothered to learn how to use me.
The demon hesitated. Humans come with a manual, it said.
It'd be a damn good idea, said Vimes.
True, murmured Angua.
It could say things like, Chapter 1, Bingily, bingily beep, and other damn fool things to spring on people at 6 in the morning, said Vimes, his eyes wild. And troubleshooting. My owner keeps trying to drop me in the privy. What am I doing wrong? And...
Carrot patted him gently on the back. I should sign off now, sir, he said gently. It's been a busy few days. Vimes rubbed his forehead.
I dare say I could do with a rest, he said. Come on, there's nothing more to see here. Let's get home.
I thought you said you weren't going, Carrot began, but Vimes's mind was already scolding him.
I meant the yard, of course, he said. I'll go home afterwards.
A ball of lamplight floated through the ramekin library, drifting across the shelves of huge, leather-bound books. Many of them had never been read, Sybil knew. Various ancestors had simply ordered them from the engravers and put them on the shelves, because a library was something you had to have, don't you know? Like a stable yard and a servant's wing, and some ghastly landscaping mistake created by bloody stupid Johnson. Although in the later case, her grandfather had shot the man before he could do any real damage. She held the lamp higher. Ramkins looked down their noses at her from their frames, through the brown varnish of the centuries. Portraits were another thing that had been collected out of unregarded habit. Most of them were of men. They were invariably in armor and always on horseback, and every single one of them had fought the sworn enemies of Ankh-Morpork. In recent times, this had been quite difficult, and her grandfather, for example, had to lead an expedition all the way to Hawondaland in order to find some sworn enemies, although there was an adequate supply and a lot of swearing by the time he left. Earlier, of course, it had been a lot easier. Ramkin regiments had fought the city's enemies all over the Stowe Plains and had inflicted heroic casualties, quite often on people in the opposing armies. Side note 8. It is a long-cherished tradition among a certain type of military thinker that huge casualties are the main thing if they are on the side that this is a valuable bonus. If they are on the other side, then this is a valuable bonus. End side note 8. Ramkin regiments had fought the city's enemies all over Stowe Plains and had inflicted heroic casualties, or quite often on people in the opposing armies. There were a few women among the sitters, none of them holding anything heavier than a glove or a small pet dragon. Their job had largely been to roll bandages and await the return of their husbands with, she liked to think, resolution and fortitude, and a general hope that said husbands would return with as many of their bits as possible. The point was, though, that they never thought about it. There was a war, and off they went. If there wasn't a war, they looked for one. They didn't even use words like duty. It was all built in at bone level. She sighed. It was all so difficult these days. And Lady Sybil came from a class that was not used to difficulty, or at least the kind that couldn't be sorted out by shouting at a servant. 500 years ago, one of her ancestors had cut off a Klatchian's head in battle, and had brought it home on a pole, and no one thought any the worse of him, given what the Klatchians would have cut off if they'd caught him. That seemed straightforward. You fought them, they fought you, everyone knew the rules. And if you got your head cut off, you jolly well didn't blub about it afterwards. Certainly things were better now, but they were just more difficult. And of course, some of those antique husbands were away for months or years at a time. And for them, wives and families were pretty much like the library and stable-yard and the Johnson exploding pagoda. You got them sorted out, and they didn't think much about it. At least Sam was home every day. Well, most days. Every night, anyway. Well, parts of most nights, certainly. At least they ate meals together. Well, most meals. Well, at least they made a start on most meals. Well, at least she knew he was never very far away, just somewhere where he was trying to do too much and run too fast, and people were trying to kill him. All in all, she considered, she was jolly lucky. Vimes stared at Carrot, who was standing in front of his desk. "So what does all that add up to?" he said. "The man we know didn't get the prince is dead. The man who probably did is dead. Someone tried very clumsily to make it look as if Ozzy was paid by the Klatchians. Okay, I can see why someone might want to do that. That's what Fred calls politics. They get Snowy to do the real business. And he helps poor dumb Ozzy, who's there to take the fall, and then the watch proves that Ozzy was in the pay of the Klatchians, and that's another reason for fighting, and Snowy just slopes off. Only someone cured his dandruff for him." "After he'd written something, sir," said Carrot. "Ah, yes." Vimes looked at the notepad retrieved from Snowy's room. It was a crude affair. The wads of mismatched bits of scrap that the engravers sold off cheaply. He sniffed at it. "Soap on the edges," he said. "His new shampoo," said Carrot. "First time he'd used it." "How do you know?" "We looked at all the bottles on the heap, sir." Looks like fresh blood here at the spine, where they're stitched together." "His, sir," said Angua. Vimes nodded. You never argue with Angua about blood. "But none of the actual pages have blood on them," said Vimes, "which is a bit odd. Messy business, decapitation. People tend to spray. So the top page has been taken away, sir," said Carrot, grinning and nodding. "But that's not the funny part, sir. See if you can guess, sir." Vimes glared at him and then moved the lamp closer. "Very faint impression of writing on the top page," he muttered. "Can't make it out." "We can't either, sir. We know he wrote in pencil, sir. There was one on the table." "Very faint traces," said Vimes. "Blokes like Snowy write as though they're chipping stone." He flicked the notebook. "Someone tore out not just the page he'd written on, but several below it as well." "Clever, eh, sir? Everyone knows. You can read the suspicious note by looking at the marks on the page below," said Vimes. He tossed the book onto the table again. There's a message there. Yes. "Perhaps he was blackmailing whoever's behind all this," said Angua. "That's not his style," said Vimes. "No, what I meant was, there was a knock on the door." And Fred Cullen entered. "Brung you a mug of coffee," he said. "And there's a bunch of, Klatchians to see you downstairs, Mr. Vimes. Probably come to give you a medal and gabble at you in their lingo. And if you're on for late supper, Mrs. Gorif's doing goat and rice and foreign gravy." "I suppose I'd better go down and see them," said Vimes. "But I haven't even had time for a wash." "That's evidence of your heroic endeavours," said Cullen stoutly. Oh, all right. Unease began about halfway down the stairs. Vimes had never run into a group of citizens wishing to give him a medal, and so he did not have a lot of experience on this score. But the group waiting for him in a tight cluster near the sergeant's desk did not look like a committee of welcome. They were Klatchian. At least they were wearing foreign-looking clothes, and one or two of them had caught more sun than you generally got in Ankh-Morpork. The feeling crept over Vimes that Klatch was a very big place, in which his city and the whole of the Stowe Plains would be lost, and so there must be room in it for all kinds of peoples, including this short chap in red fez who was practically vibrating with indignation.
Are you the man Vimes?
The N-fezed one demanded.
Well, I'm Commander Vimes. We demand the release of Gorif family. We demand the release of the Gorif family, and we won't take any excuses.
Vimes blinked.
Release? You have locked them up and confiscated their shop.
Vimes stared at the man, and then he looked across the room at Sergeant Detritus.
Where did you put the family, Sergeant?
Detritus saluted.
In their cells, sir.
Aha, said the man in the fez.
You admit it.
Excuse me, who are you? Said Vimes, blinking with tiredness.
I don't have to tell you, and you can't beat it out of me,
said the man, sticking out his chest. Oh, thank you for telling me, said Vimes. I do hate wasted effort.
Oh, hello, Mr. Vizier,
said Carrot, appearing behind Vimes.
Did you get the note about that book?
There was one of those silences that happen when everyone has to reprogram their faces. Then Vimes said, What?
Mr. Vizier sells books in Windy Street, said Carrot.
Only I asked him for some books on Klatch, you see. And one of the ones he's gave me was the Perfumed Allotment, or the Garden of Delights. And I didn't mind because the Klatchians invented gardens, sir, so I thought it might be a very useful cultural insight. Get inside the Klatchian mind, as it were. Only well, it wasn't about gardening. He started to blush.
Yes, all right. Bring it back if you like,
said Mr. Vizier, looking a little derailed.
I just thought you ought to know in case you hadn't. In case you sold. Well, it could shock the impressionable, you know. A book like that. Yes, fine. Corporal Angua was so shocked she couldn't stop laughing, Carrot went on. I will have your money sent round directly, said Vizier. His expression turned vengeful again. He glared at Vimes. Books are unimportant at this time. We demand you release my countrymen now.
Detritus, why the hell did you put them in the cells? Said Vimes warily.
What else we got, sir? They're not locked in. They got clean blankets.
That's your explanation, said Vimes. They're our guests.
In the cells,
said Vizier, relishing the word. They're free to go whenever they like, said Vimes.
I'm sure they are now,
said Vizier, contriving to indicate that only his arrival had prevented officially sanctioned bloodshed.
You can be sure the patrician will hear about this.
He hears about everything else, said Vimes. But if they leave here, who is going to protect them?
We are, their fellow countrymen.
How? Vizier almost stood to attention.
By force of arms if necessary.
Oh, good, said Vimes. Then there'll be 2 mobs.
Bingily, bingily, beep.
Damn, Vimes slapped at his pocket. I don't want to know I haven't got any appointments.
You have one at 11 p.m. The Rat's Chamber at the Palace,
said the disorganizer.
Don't be stupid. Please yourself.
And shut up.
I was just trying to help.
Shut up. Vimes turned back to the Klatch bookseller. Mr. Varzier, if Gorif wants to leave with you, we won't stop him.
Aha! You may well try.
Vimes told himself that there was no reason at all why a Klatch couldn't be a pompous little troublemaker. But he felt uneasy about it, like a man edging along the side of a very deep crevasse. Sergeant Cullen.
Yes, sir.
See to this, will you?
Yes, sir.
Diplomatically.
Right, sir.
Cullen tapped the side of his nose.
Is this politics, sir?
Just go and fetch the Gorif family, and they can. Vimes waved a hand vaguely. They can do whatever they like. He turned and walked up the stairs.
Someone has to protect my people's rights,
shouted Varzier. They heard Vimes stop halfway up the stairs. The board creaked under his weight for a second. Then he continued upwards, and several of the watchmen started breathing again. Vimes shut his office door behind him. Politics. He sat down and scrabbled through the papers. It was much easier to think about crime. Give him good, honest crime any time. He tried to shut out the outside world. Someone had beheaded Snowy Slopes. That was a fact. You couldn't put it down to a shaving accident or unreasonably strong shampoo. And Snowy had attempted to shoot the prince. And so had Ozzy. But Ozzy only thought he was an assassin. Everyone else thought he was a weird little twerp who was as impressionable as wet clay. A lovely idea, though. You used a real murderer, a nice, quiet professional, and then you had, Vimes smiled grimly, someone else to take the fall. And if he hadn't taken a less metaphorical fall, the poor, twisted little sword would have believed he was the murderer. And the watch was supposed to believe it was a Klatchian plot. Sand in their sandals. The nerve of it. Did they think he was stupid? He wished. He wished Fred had carefully swept up the sand, because he was damn well going to find out who'd put it there, and they were going to eat it. Someone wanted Vimes to chase Klatchians. The man on the burning roof. Did he fit in? Did he have to fit in? What could Vimes recall? A man in a robe, his face hidden, and a voice of a man not just used to giving commands. Vimes was used to giving commands, but also used to having commands obeyed, whereas a member of the watch treated orders as suggestions. But some things didn't have to fit. That was where clues let you down. And the damn notebook, that was the oddest thing yet. So someone had carefully ripped out several pages after Snowy had written whatever he'd written. Someone bright enough to know the trick of looking at the pages underneath for faint impressions. So why not pinch the whole pad? It was too complicated. But somewhere was the one thing that'd make it simple. that would turn it all into sense. He flung down his pencil and wrenched open the door to the stairs.
What the hell's all this noise?
He yelled. Sergeant Cullen was halfway up the stairs.
It was Mr. Gorif and Mr. Vazir having a bit of what you might call an angry-bargy, sir. What you might call an argy-bargy, sir. Someone set fire to someone else's country 200 years ago, Carrot says. What, just now? It's all Klatchian to me, sir. Anyway, Wazir's gone off with his nose in a sling.
Wazir comes from Somalia, you see, said Carrot, and Mr. Gorif comes from El Harib, and the two countries only stopped fighting 10 years ago. Religious differences.
Run out of weapons, said Vimes.
Ran out of rocks, sir. They ran out of weapons last century. Vimes shook his head.
That always chews me up, he said. People killing one another just because their gods have squabbled.
Oh, they've got the same god, sir. Apparently, it's over a word in their holy book, sir. The El Haribians say it translates as God, and the Somalis say it's man.
How can you mix them up?
Well, there's only one tiny dot difference in the script, you see, and some people reckon it's only a bit of fly dirt in any case.
Centuries of war because a fly crapped in the wrong place.
It could have been worse, said Carrot. If it had been slightly to the left, the word would have been licorice.
Vimes shook his head.
Carrot was good at picking up this sort of thing.
And I know how to ask for vindaloo, he thought.
And it turns out that's just a Klatchian word meaning
mouth-scalding gristle for macho foreign idiots. I wish we understood more about Klatch, he said.
Sergeant Cullen tapped the side of his nose, conspiratorially.
Know the enemy, eh, sir? He said. Oh, I know the enemy, said Vimes. It's Klatchians I want to find out about.
Commander Vimes? The watchman looked round. Vimes narrowed his eyes.
You're one of Rust's men, aren't you?
The young man saluted.
Lieutenant Hornet, sir.
He hesitated. His lordship has sent me to ask you if you and your senior officers would be so good as to come to the palace at your convenience, sir.
Really? Those were his words?
The lieutenant decided that honesty was the only policy. In fact, he said, get Vimes and his mob up here right now, sir.
Oh, did he? Said Vimes.
Bingily, bingily beep,
said a small triumphant voice from his pocket.
The time is 11 p.m. precisely.
The door opened before Nobby knocked, and a small stout woman glared out at him.
Yes, I am,
she snapped. Nobby stood with his hand still raised.
Are you Mrs. Cake?
He said. Yes, but I don't hold with doing it except for money. Nobby's hand did not move.
You can tell the future, right?
Said Nobby. They stared at one another. Then Mrs. Cake thumped her own ear a couple of times and blinked.
Drat! Left my precognition on again.
Her gaze unfocused for a moment as she replayed the recent conversation in the privacy of her head. I think we're sorted out, she said. She looked at Nobby and sniffed.
You'd better come in. Mind the carpet. It's just been washed. And I can only give you 10 minutes, 'cause I've got cabbage boiling.
She led Corporal Nobbs into her tiny front room. A lot of it was occupied by a round table covered with a green cloth. There was a crystal bowl on the table, not very well covered by a pink knitted lady in a crinoline dress. Mrs. Cake mentioned Nobby to sit down. He obediently did so. The smell of cabbage drifted through the room. Crinoline, an open weave fabric of horsehair or cotton that is usually stiffened and used especially for interlinings and millinery. Crinoline, a full stiff skirt or underskirt made of crinoline. Hoop skirt. A lot of it was occupied by a round table covered with a green cloth. There was a crystal bowl on the table, not very well covered by a pink knitted lady in a crinoline dress. Mrs. Cake motioned Nobby to sit down. He obediently did so. The smell of cabbage drifted through the room.
A bloke in the pub told me about you, Nobby mumbled. Said you do mead, you mean?
Would you care to tell me your problem? Said Mrs. Cake. She looked at Nobby again and, in a state of certainty that had nothing to do with precognition and everything to do with observation, added,
That is, which of your problems do you want to know about?
Nobby coughed.
It's a bit, intimate. Affairs of the heart sort of thing. Are women involved? Said Mrs. Cake cautiously. I hope so. What else is there?
Mrs. Cake visibly relaxed.
I just want to know if I'm going to meet any, Nobby went on.
I see. Mrs. Cake gave a kind of facial shrug. It wasn't up to her to tell people how to waste their money.
Well, there's the 10-penny future. That's what you see. And there's the $10 future. That's what you get. $10? That's more than a week's pay. I'd better take the 10-penny one.
A very wise choice, said Mrs. Cake.
Give me your paw.
Hand, said Nobby.
That's what I said.
Mrs. Cake examined Nobby's outstretched palm while taking care not to touch it.
Are you going to moan and roll your eyes and stuff?
Said Nobby, a man out to get his 10 pennorth. A man out to get his 10 pennorth.
I don't have to take cheek, said Mrs. Cake without looking up. That sort of.
She peered closer and then gave Nobby a sharp look.
Have you been playing with this hand?
Pardon? Mrs. Cake whipped the crinoline lady off the crystal and glared into the depths. After a while she shook her head.
I don't know. I'm sure.
Oh, well. She cleared her throat and spoke in a more Sibyllic voice.
Mr. Nobbs, I see you surrounded by dusky ladies in a hot place. Looks a bit foreign to me. They're laughing and chatting with you. In fact, one of them's just handed you a drink. None of them are shouting or anything? Said Nobby, mystified. Doesn't look like it, said Mrs. Cake, equally fascinated. They seem quite happy. You can't see any magnets. What are they? Dunno, Nobby admitted. I expect You'd know him if you saw him.
Mrs. Cake, despite a certain rigidity of character, couldn't help but be aware of a drift in Nobby's speculation.
Some of the ladies look nubile, she hinted. Ah, right,
said Nobby, his expression not changing in any way.
If you understand what I mean? Right, yes, nubile, right.
Nubile, of marriageable condition or age. Nubile young women. Nubile, sexually attractive, used of a young woman, a nubile starlet. Nubile.
Some of the ladies look nubile, she hinted. Ah, right,
said Nobby, his expression not changing in any way.
If you understand what I mean? Right, yes, nubile, right.
Mrs. Cake gave up. Nobby counted out 10 pennies.
And that'll be soon, will it?
said Nobby.
Oh, yes, I can't see very far for 10 pence.
Happy young ladies, mused Nobby.
Nubile too. Definitely something to think about.
After he'd gone, Mrs. Cake went back to her crystal and sneaked a whole $10 worth of precognition for her own curiosity and satisfaction, and laughed about it all afternoon. Vimes was only half surprised when the doors to the rat's chamber opened, and there, sitting at the head of the table, was Lord Rust. The patrician wasn't there. He was half surprised, that is, at a certain shallow level, he thought. That's odd. I thought you couldn't budge the man with a siege weapon. But at a dark level, where the daylight seldom penetrated, he thought, of course. At a time like this, men like Rust rise to the top. It's like stirring a swamp with a stick. Really big bubbles are suddenly on the surface, and there's a bad smell about everything. Nevertheless, he saluted and said, Lord Veterinary on his holidays, then?
Lord Veterinary stepped down this evening, Vimes, said Lord Rust. Pro tem, of course. Just for the duration of the emergency.
Really? said Vimes.
Yes, and I have to say that he anticipated a certain cynicism on your part, Commander, and therefore asked me to give you this letter. You will see that it is sealed with his seal.
Vimes looked at the envelope. There was certainly the official seal in the wax, but he met Lord Rust's gaze, and at least that suspicion faded. Rust wouldn't try a trick like that. Men like Rust had a moral code of sorts, and some things weren't honorable. You could own a street of crowded houses where people lived like cockroaches, and the cockroaches lived like kings, and that was perfectly okay. But Rust would probably die before he'd descend to forgery.
I see, sir,
said Vimes.
You wanted me. Commander Vimes, I must ask you to take the Klatchians resident in the city into custody.
On what charge, sir?
Commander, we are on the verge of war with Klatch. Surely you understand?
No, sir.
We are talking about spying, Commander. Sabotage, even, said Lord Rust.
To be frank, The city is to be placed under martial law.
Yes, sir. What kind of law's that, sir?
Said Vimes, staring straight ahead.
You know very well, Vimes. Is it the kind where you shout, "Stop!" before you fire, sir, or the other kind?
Ah, I see. Rust stood up and leaned forward.
It pleased you to be smart with Lord Veterinary, and for some reason he indulged you, he said.
I, on the other hand, know your type.
My type?
It seems to me that the streets are full of crimes, Commander. Unlicensed begging, public nuisances, but you seem to turn a blind eye. You seem to think you should have bigger ideas. But you are not required to have big ideas, Commander. You are a thief-taker, nothing more. Are you eyeballing me, Vimes?
I was trying not to turn a blind eye, sir.
You seem to feel, Vimes, that the law is some kind of big glowing light in the sky, which is not subject to control. And you are wrong. The law is what we tell it to be. I'm not going to add "do you understand" because I know you understand, and I am not going to try to reason with you. I know a rank bad hat when I see one.
Bad hat, said Vimes weakly.
Commander Vimes, he said, I had hoped to avoid this, but the last few days point to a succession of astonishing judgmental errors on your part. The Prince Kufura was shot, and you seemed helpless to prevent this or find the criminal responsible. Mobs appear to run around the city unimpeded. I gather that one of your sergeants proposed to shoot innocent people in the head, and we have just heard that you took it upon yourself to arrest an innocent businessman and lock him in the cells for no reason at all.
Vimes heard Colin gasp, but it sounded a long way off. He could feel everything crumbling under him. But his mind seemed to be flying now, flapping through a pink sky where nothing mattered very much.
Oh, I don't know about that, sir, he said. He was guilty of repeatedly being Klatchian, was he? Don't you want me to do that to all of them? And if this was not enough, Rust went on, we are told, and in other circumstances I would find this very hard to believe, even of a counter-jumper like you, that earlier tonight you, being quite unprovoked, assaulted 2 Klatchian guards, trespassed on Klatchian soil, entered the women's quarters, abducted 2 Klatchians from their beds, ordered the destruction of Klatchian property, and, well, frankly, acted quite disgracefully.
What is the point of arguing? Vimes thought. Why play cards with a shaved deck? And yet, 2 Klatchians, sir.
It seems Prince Kufura has been kidnapped, Vimes. I find it hard to believe that even you would attempt that, but the Klatchians seem to be suggesting this. You were seen entering their property illegally, and you appear to have dragged a helpless lady from her bed. What have you got to say about that?
It was on fire at the time, sir.
Lieutenant Hornet stepped forward and whispered something. Lord Rust subsided a bit.
All right, very well.
There were perhaps mitigating circumstances, but politically it was a most ill-advised action, Vimes. I cannot pretend to know what has happened to the prince, but frankly you seem to have taken a positive delight in making matters worse. Can you climb, Mr. Vimes? Vimes said nothing. The other man had been carrying something bulky over his shoulder. You are removed from authority, Commander, and the watch will come under the direct command of this council. Is that understood? Rust turned to Carrot. Captain Carrot, many of us here have heard good reports about you, and by due authority I hereby appoint you acting commander of the watch. Vimes shut his eyes. Carrot saluted smartly.
No, sir.
Vimes opened his eyes wide.
Really?
Russ stared at Carrot for a few moments, and then gave a little shrug. Well, loyalty is a fine thing. Sergeant Cullen?
Sir.
In these circumstances, and since you are the most experienced non-commissioned officer and have an exempt and have a military record, you will take command of the watch for the duration of the emergency.
No, sir.
That was an instruction, Sergeant. Beads of sweat began to form on Cullen's brow.
No, sir. Sergeant? You can put it where the sun does not shine, sir,
said Cullen desperately. Once again, Vimes saw Rust's milky blue stare. Rust never looked surprised, and since he knew that a mere sergeant would never dare offer cheeky defiance, he erased Sergeant Cullen from the immediate universe. The gaze turned briefly to Detritus. And he doesn't know how to speak to a troll, Vimes thought, and he was once again impressed, in the same dark way, by the manner in which Rust dealt with the problem. He dealt with it by making it not be there. Who is the senior corporal in the watch, Sir Samuel? That will be Corporal Nobbs. The committee went into a huddle. There was a rush of whispering, in which the words, "an absolute little tit," could be heard several times. Finally, Rust looked up again. And the next in seniority? Let me see. That would be Corporal Strong in the Arm, said Vimes. He felt oddly lightheaded. Perhaps he is a man who can take orders.
He's a dwarf, you idiot.
Not a muscle moved on Rust's face. There was a clink as Vimes's badge was set neatly on the table.
I don't have to take this,
Vimes said calmly. Oh, so you'd rather be a civilian, would you?
A watchman is a civilian, you inbred streak of piss.
Rust's brain erased the sounds that his ears could not possibly have heard. And the keys to the armory, Sir Samuel, he said. They jangled as they landed on the table. Clink, clink, clink. And do the rest of you have any empty gestures to make? Said Lord Rust. Sergeant Cullen took his grimy badge out of his pocket and was a little disappointed that it didn't make a defiant tinkle when he threw it on the table, but instead bounced and smashed the water jug.
I got my badge carved on my arm, Detritus rumbled. Someone can try and take it off if they likes.
Carrot laid his badge down very carefully. Rust raised his eyebrows. You too, Captain? Yes, sir. I would have thought that you, at least. He stood and looked up in annoyance as the doors opened. A couple of the palace guards ran in, with a group of Klatchians behind them. The council got to their feet in a hurry. Vimes recognized the Klatchian in the center of the group. He'd seen him around at official functions, and if it hadn't been for the fact that the man was a Klatchian, would have marked him down as a shifty piece of work. "Who's he?" he whispered to Carrot. "Prince Khalif. He's the deputy ambassador. Another prince." The man came to a halt in front of the table, glanced at Vimes with no show of recognition, and bowed to Lord Rust. "Prince Khalif," said Lord Rust, "your arrival is unannounced, but nevertheless—" "I have grave news, my lord." Even in his stunned state, a part of Vimes registered that the voice was different. Kulfura had learned his second language on the street, but this one had had tutors. "At a time like this? What news is it?" said Rust. "There have been developments on the new land, regrettable incidents, and indeed in Ankh-Morpork too." He glanced at Vimes again. "Although here, I must say, reports are confused. Lord Rust, I have to tell you, we are technically at war." "Technically at war," said Vimes. "I am afraid events are carrying us forward," said Khalif. "The situation is delicate." "They know they're going to fight," Vimes thought. "This is just like the start of a dance, where you hang around looking at your partner." "I must tell you that you are being given 12 hours to remove all your citizens from Leshp," said Khalif. "If that is done, matters will be happily resolved for the present." "Our response is that you have 12 hours to quit Leshp," said Rust. "If that is not done, then we will take steps." Khalif bowed slightly. "We understand one another. A formal document will be with you shortly, and no doubt we will be receiving one from you." "Indeed." "Here, hang on. You can't just—" Vimes began. "Sir Samuel, you are no longer commander of the Watch, and you have no place at these proceedings," said Rust sharply. He turned back to the prince. "It is unfortunate that things have come to this," he said stiffly. "Indeed, but there comes a time when words are no longer sufficient. I must agree with you. And then it is time to test one's strength." Vimes stared in fascinated horror from one face to the other. "We will, of course, allow you time to quit your embassy, such of it as remains. So kind. And of course we will extend to you the same courtesy." Khalif bowed slightly. So did Rust. "After all, just because our countries are at war is no reason why we should not respect one another as friends," said Lord Rust. "What? Yes, it bloody well is," said Vimes. "I can't believe this. You can't just stand there and—" "Good grief. Whatever happened to diplomacy?" "War, Vimes, is a continuation of diplomacy by other means," said Lord Rust. "As you would know if you were really a gentleman." "And you Klatchians are as bad," Vimes went on. "It's that green mouldy mutton Jenkins sells. You've all got foam and sheep disease. You can't just stand there and—" "Sir Samuel, you are, as you are at pains to point out, a civilian," said Rust. "As such, you have no place here." Vimes didn't bother with a salute, but just turned away and walked out of the room. The rest of the squad followed him in silence, back to Sidopolis Yard. "I told him he could put it where the sun don't shine," said Sergeant Cullen as they crossed the brass bridge. "That's right," said Vimes woodenly.
Well done. Right to his face, where the sun don't shine. Just like that,
said Cullen. It was a little difficult to tell from his tone whether this was a matter of pride or dread.
I'm afraid Lord Rust is technically correct, sir, said Carrot.
Really? Yes, Mr. Vimes. The safety of the city is of paramount importance, so in times of war the civil power is subject to military authority.
I told him, said Fred Cullen, right where the sun does not shine, I said.
The deputy ambassador didn't mention Prince Kufura, said Carrot. That was odd. I'm going home, said Vimes.
We're nearly there, sir,
said Carrot.
I mean home. I need some sleep.
Yes, sir. What shall I tell the lads, sir?
Tell them anything you like. I looked him right in the eye, and I told him, I said, you can put it right where the...
mused Sergeant Cullen.
You want me and some of der boys go and sort out that Rust later on?
Said Detritus.
It no problem. He bound to be guilty or something. No.
Vimes's head felt so light now that he couldn't touch the ground with a rope. He left them outside the yard and let his head drag him on and up the hill and round the corner and into the house and past his astonished wife and up the stairs and into the bedroom, where he fell full length on the bed and was asleep before he hit it.